Forget swords and nukes. These are the weapons that make you ask, was everyone in charge drunk?
No, Jesse, stick to the script.
Sorry, some say truth is stranger than fiction. History's weirdest weapons say, hold my beer. Welcome to Whacky History, where generals get weird and inventors get desperate. Strap in, because these are the weirdest weapons ever invented. No, seriously, they actually tried these. 1. The Krummlauf. Nazi Germany, World War II. Urban combat in World War II was deadly, and the Germans wanted a way to shoot around corners. Their answer, the Krummlauf. A machine gun with a barrel bent at a 30 to 90 degree angle. The theory was solid, fire without exposing your head. In reality, the bullets often shattered, the barrel wore out after a few shots, and sometimes it exploded right in the shooter's face. They built a few, but most soldiers preferred a good old peek and pray, because nothing says confidence like pulling the trigger and hoping your gun doesn't do a U-turn. 2. The Gay Bomb. USA, 1994. Here's one for the annals of what were they thinking? In the 1990s, US military researchers genuinely proposed a chemical weapon that made enemy soldiers irresistibly attracted to each other.
What?
The plan: spray troops with aphrodisiacs, cause distraction and chaos, and, win the war. The concept made it into official documents before being shelved. No, it wasn't built, but yes, the gay bomb is a real footnote in Pentagon history. The only bomb that could turn a foxhole into a love nest. 3. The Panjandrum, UK, World War II. The British never met an eccentric idea they didn't love. To breach Nazi defenses on D-Day, they built the Panjandrum, a pair of giant wheels connected by a barrel packed with explosives, all propelled by dozens of rockets. The idea was to launch this flaming wheel of doom up the beach. In practice, the Panjandrum zigzagged wildly and nearly killed top generals during a demonstration. It was never used in combat. But it's proof that sometimes just wing it is not a military strategy. It was more like the world's first deadly shopping cart. 4. Bat bombs. USA, World War II. The US military found itself brainstorming how to set enemy cities ablaze without risking pilots. That's where Dr. Ladle S. Adams comes in, a dentist with a wild idea. Why not use bats? The title at the start kinda gave it away, but yes, bats. Clearly, this guy watched too many horror movies. The plan? Strap tiny bombs to thousands of bats, pack them into a bomb-shaped container, and drop them over Japanese cities. The bats, being bats, would roost in wooden buildings, then boom. Instant inferno. What could go wrong? Well, during testing, the bats escaped and accidentally set fire to the Army's own base in New Mexico. That's right. The only successful attack was on themselves. Project cost, $2 million. Damage to dignity? Priceless. Bats generally had a grudge against real estate. 5. Pigeon-Guided Missiles. USA, World War II. Before computers, America turned to the next best thing: birds. In the 1940s, psychologist B.F. Skinner trained pigeons to peck at images of enemy ships on a screen. The pecking would guide a missile directly onto the target, no joke. The birds were the guidance system. Project Pigeon was real. It worked in tests, but military brass couldn't get past the guided by pigeon part and pulled the plug. So the world was spared the phrase bird-brained missile. Imagine explaining that to the president. Mr. President, we need to secure more birdseed or we risk losing the war. 6. Ever gotten roasted on Twitter by someone with no profile pic? This was the World War I equivalent. And yep, it's our German brothers at it again. When you want to annoy your enemy from far, like really far, you build the Paris gun. This behemoth artillery piece could lob shells into Paris from 75 miles away. So high, they actually passed through the stratosphere. The psychological effect was massive. Parisians lived in fear, even though the gun was wildly inaccurate and its barrel wore out after just a few shots. It was less a weapon and more an expensive way to say, "We see you, Paris." Long-distance relationships are hard. Long-distance artillery? Way worse. 7. You've seen scooters. You've seen bazookas. But have you seen a scooter with a bazooka? In the 1950s, the French military gave their paratroopers Vespa scooters mounted with anti-tank recoilless rifles. The idea: drop behind enemy lines, scoot up, and blast a tank. They looked absolutely bonkers, and while photos exist, nobody ever fired a bazooka while riding a Vespa. Somewhere, an Italian is still weeping at the sight. Well, it was like James Bond, if Bond was on a budget and slightly unhinged. 8. Sticky bomb, UK, World War II. British engineers wanted a weapon that could stick to enemy tanks. Their solution? A glass sphere filled with nitroglycerin, coated in ultra-sticky glue, and wrapped in a sock. Soldiers would pull the pin, hurl it at a tank, and hope for the best. Unfortunately, the bomb stuck to everything. Gloves, uniforms, sometimes the thrower's own helmet, except enemy tanks. The weapon was quickly replaced, but not before giving the phrase sticky situation a whole new meaning. If you ever wanted to see a grown man run from his own hand, this was your chance. 9. Gustav Gun, Germany, World War II. If you think size doesn't matter, you haven't seen the Schwerer Gustav. This 1,350-ton railway gun was the largest artillery piece ever built, firing shells the size of cars. It took weeks to set up and required a crew of 2,000. Gustav could flatten a fortress, but its mobility was non-existent. After a few uses, it was abandoned. Turns out, bring the big guns isn't always practical if you need a train station to fire. Gustav didn't move fast, but when it hit, it deleted your postcode. 10. Anti-tank dogs, Soviet Union, World War II. Desperate times call for desperate and downright bizarre measures. The Soviets trained dogs to carry explosives and run under enemy tanks. The idea? The dog's belly-triggered bomb would detonate under the target. But dogs, being dogs, often ran back to their handlers, or got confused by the chaos of battle. The program was discontinued after too many friendly tanks, and dogs were lost. It was less Call of Duty, more Paw of Futility. 11. How do you hide a warship from Japanese bombers? The Dutch answer: make it look like an island. The crew covered the ship with trees, branches, and camouflage netting, then anchored close to shore by day, moving at night. Amazingly, it worked. The Abraham Crijnssen sailed undetected from Indonesia to Australia, from ship ahoy to island, oh boy. 12th. Nock Volley Gun, UK, 1779. Boarding enemy ships was a messy, close-quarters affair. Enter the Nock Volley Gun, a flintlock firearm with 7 barrels that fired in unison. The result? A wall of lead and a wall of smoke. The recoil was so fierce it could break a man's shoulder, and the muzzle flash risked setting sails on fire. The Royal Navy retired it quickly, but it lives on in pirate movies and nightmares. I mean, why stop at your enemies when you can also injure your own crew and set the ship on fire? 13th. Davy Crockett Nuclear Rifle, USA, 1960s. The Cold War was a time of go big or go home. America's Davy Crockett was the world's smallest nuclear device, fired from a recoilless rifle. It could obliterate a tank column, as long as you didn't mind vaporizing yourself, since its range was barely farther than its blast radius. The military finally decided sanity was more important than pocket nukes. Congratulations, you hit the enemy. Bad news, you're also the enemy. 14th. Duck's Foot Pistol, UK, 18th century. Worried about a mutiny? The Duck's Foot Pistol let you shoot 4 barrels at once, each splayed out like the toes of a duck. It was designed for ship captains and bank guards facing angry crowds. The catch? It was wildly inaccurate, more likely to scare than to hit. Nothing says back off quite like a pistol that looks like it belongs at a child's birthday party. Quack, quack, now get back. 15th, the hand mortar, Europe, 16th to 18th centuries. Before the hand grenade, there was the hand mortar, a mini cannon that fired explosive shells. It sounds cool, but the fuses were unreliable, and sometimes the bomb exploded in the barrel. Gunners often lost hands, or worse. The original DIY disarmament tool. 16. The OSS, America's wartime spy agency, wanted to humiliate enemy officers with a pocket sprayer filled with the smell of absolute horror. Think rotten eggs and skunk gas. The plan? Sneak up, squirt, and vanish, leaving the target reeking. Problem was, the stuff stuck to everything, including the spy's own hand. Weaponized embarrassment. Unlocked. Who, me? No, it's definitely you. It also answered the age-old question, what if shame had a smell? 17th. Habbakuk Ice Aircraft Carrier, UK, World War II. Short on steel, Britain dreamed up Project Habbakuk, a giant aircraft carrier made of ice reinforced with wood pulp. Peak-reet. It was unsinkable, could repair itself, and only melted if the war lasted too long. They even built a prototype on a Canadian lake. Alas, the project melted away when steel supplies improved. For a while, frozen assets meant something very different. Captain, the ship is melting. That's just summer, Jenkins. It was the only ship that needed sunscreen and a lifeboat for the ship itself. 18. Swordbreaker, Europe Renaissance. Medieval fashion was all about making a statement. Enter the Swordbreaker, a dagger with deep notches designed to catch and snap your opponent's blade. It rarely broke swords, but it looked terrifying and could trap a weapon long enough for a counterattack. It was part weapon, part conversation starter at very violent parties. 19th. Ball tank, Kugelpanzer, Nazi Germany, World War II. The Nazis built many strange machines, but the Kugelpanzer, literally ball tank, is among the weirdest. It was a one-man armored sphere on wheels, designed for reconnaissance. Only one survives. captured by the Soviets. There's no evidence it ever fought, but it certainly would have rolled into the history books, one way or another. Why conquer Europe when you can win at hamster ball races? 20. Fire lance. China, 10th century. Forget spears. Ancient Chinese inventors strapped bamboo tubes filled with gunpowder to their lances. The resulting fire lance spat flames and shrapnel at enemies, making it the ancestor of all firearms. Mostly it scared horses and singed eyebrows, but it was the start of a gunpowder revolution. Great for battle, terrible for facial hair. 21. Rocket cats. Germany, 16th century. From the Don't Try This at Home files, a 1530 German manual suggested tying firebombs to cats and birds, then releasing them to burn down enemy towns. The theory? Animals would run home and set the place ablaze. In reality, the cats did what cats do, ran in every direction except the target. 22. The Nazi wind cannon. Germany, World War II. In a desperate bid to weaponize the atmosphere, Nazi engineers built the Windkanone, a giant cannon that fired compressed air blasts at aircraft. The idea? Shoot planes out of the sky using nothing but high-pressure air. In practice, it barely dented a wooden board, let alone an Allied bomber. Hitler wanted a wind of change. What he got was a glorified hairdryer. 23. The Parisian Umbrella Gun. France, Cold War. In 1978, Bulgarian dissident Georgy Markov was assassinated in London with a modified umbrella that fired a ricin-laced pellet, straight out of a spy novel, but all too real. The tiny, toxin-filled dart was nearly invisible, making it one of the most covert weapons of the Cold War. Even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary danger. When spies get creative, even bad weather could come with a body count. 24. The Sun Gun.
What?
Nazi Germany, World War II. If comic book villains ran the Third Reich, this would be their plan. A giant mirror in space to focus sunlight and burn enemy cities. Nazi scientists genuinely pitched the Sun Gun to Hitler. It never got off the drawing board, mainly because, physics. But it's a reminder that even in war, some ideas are too hot to handle. 25. The Parisian Kiss of Death Lipstick Gun. USSR, Cold War. Spies need gadgets, and the KGB delivered. A working single-shot pistol disguised as lipstick. Concealed in a purse, it was perfect for covert assassinations. One example now sits in the CIA Museum. Kiss bang, goodbye. The only makeup that really makes you drop dead gorgeous. 26. Tree Spigot Mortar, UK, World War II. The British commandos took guerrilla warfare literally by hiding mortars inside hollowed-out trees. The idea? Camouflaged firepower for ambushes. It worked a few times in Normandy, but not often. Turns out, most trees aren't built for artillery. Great for surprise attacks, bad for squirrels. The bark is worse than the bite. 27. Zeppelin bomb droppers. Germany, World War I. The Germans used giant airships, Zeppelins, to bomb London and other cities. Bombs were dropped by hand through trapdoors, aiming at nothing in particular. The airships terrified civilians, but their accuracy was so poor, most bombs landed on fields. Still, the psychological impact was real. Imagine Uber Eats, but with explosives and no GPS. 28. Sword pistol. Europe, 18th century. Can't decide between a sword and a gun? Why not both? The sword pistol combined a flintlock firearm with a blade so you could shoot, stab, or, more likely, miss both ways. They were awkward, rare, and more dangerous to the wielder than the enemy, but they look great in museums. The ultimate for anyone who can't commit. Pick a lane, Gary. 29. The Semple Tank. New Zealand, World War II. When New Zealand couldn't get real tanks during World War II, they improvised by building tanks out of tractors and sheets of corrugated iron. The Semple Tank was so tall and slow it could barely turn, let alone fight. None ever saw combat, but they remain a monument to Kiwi number 8 wire spirit and stubborn optimism. Proof that you can't spell tank without T-A-N-KED. 30. The Parisian Pigeon Paratroopers. France, World War I and World War II. Long before Wi-Fi, armies used pigeons to carry messages. The French took it up a notch, strapping tiny parachutes to pigeons and dropping them behind enemy lines. Some delivered vital intel, others just enjoyed the ride. The idea was so effective, the Germans tried to shoot every pigeon they saw. Airmail, 1917 edition. The only time you'll see a bird do a better parachute landing than your cousin at skydiving class. Phew. There you have it. 30 of the weirdest weapons ever invented. All 100% real. All 100% wacky. Some changed history, some just changed the definition of bad idea. But every single one proves that in war, the line between genius and madness is razor thin. If you love this madness, smash that like button, subscribe for more wacky history, and tell us in the comments, which of these weapons would you be brave or foolish enough to try? Which ones did we leave out?